Selection bias is the bias introduced by selecting individuals that aren't necessarily representative of the entire population. This can often lead to false conclusions being drawn. In other words, because the selection process isn't random, the results become skewed compared to what the actual results should have been if the data was gathered correctly. In this video, I'm going to show you using visual aids and graphs that this phenomenon happens in the dating market in several ways. This unfortunately makes it harder for most guys, but at the same time, luckily, there are workarounds which can allow you to use this knowledge to your advantage. So you can reduce the chance you'll end up with a low quality woman who will cheat on you, monkey branch when a better option comes along, or extorts you out of your money. First, we'll start by defining using this chart what the difference is between a low quality and high quality woman. The dots you see on your screen now shows a rough depiction of what I believe the female dating pool looks like. I've color coded them too so you can easily see the different levels of quality out there. Breaking this down by each of the axes, on the bottom we have attractiveness. We've all heard of the 1 to 10 scale before, and I think most men will agree the majority of women fall somewhere in the middle. So they're either a 4, 5 or 6. This distribution is also backed by this study where men were asked to rate women's attractiveness on a dating app. As for the second scale, which is purity, this is essentially a measure of a woman's values, like the ones listed here. The more of these things a woman has, the better and higher her purity score, and the less of these things she has, the lower her score. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any data or studies that have measured these variables, so I decided to distribute the scores evenly on the graph, meaning there is an even spread of high, medium, and low purity. Anyway, now let's start introducing selection biases that you'll see can change the picture of this dating pool very quickly. A common belief I hear from guys who are angry about dating is that most women date multiple guys at one time. This might sound believable based on experience, but could there be a selection bias at play here? One that is making guys reach this conclusion disproportionately more than they should? The answer is yes, and it is because of repeat readings. Here's a real simple example. Imagine there are two women. One dates multiple guys at a time while the other only dates one guy. At any random stage, let's say the woman who dates multiple guys is currently seeing 10 men, while the other woman is only seeing 1. Now, if you're any one of these guys, from a probability standpoint, you are way more likely to be one of the men who is dating the serial dater. And if and when any new guys also start trying to compete, they're going to be unknowingly forced into trying with the serial dater because the relationship woman is going to be closed off from any other options. Anyway, if we now go back to the graph, how will this look for our dating pool? Well, common sense says the lower purity the woman, the more likely she is to date multiple guys at a time. Therefore, because these women are essentially generating repeat readings, it means we need to put multipliers next to each of them, indicating the number of men she will date simultaneously. Furthermore, since the high purity women are more likely to date only one guy at a time, if they are currently in a relationship, it means they are removed as they are not available for other guys to date. Therefore, what we are left with is this vastly skewed picture compared to what we originally had. So, that's the selection bias of purity. How about when it comes to attractiveness? Well, as I'm about to explain, there is another selection bias here which again makes it harder to get these high quality women. There's this theory spoken about a lot in this community called just be first, which for anyone who doesn't know is this idea that average guys can get relationships with top tier women when they're really young, say because they met in high school. The theory is that when a woman is young, she might not know yet what her true market value is. It's likely she hasn't been overwhelmed with attention from guys on dating apps and social media, and she probably hasn't experienced getting relentlessly hit on in bars/clubs either. Therefore, for the time she is young, she might give the average guy a chance. So, this is just to be first, and there probably is some truth to the argument. But I have an alternative theory for why this may also be happening, and it's to do with selection bias. If we take a look at our original chart again and imagine these are all young women who've never had a relationship before. Now let's also add another variable by outlining some of the dots in black, which indicates a woman has slightly lower than normal standards. In other words, she's happy dating an average guy or a guy 1 to 2 points below her looks level. Anyway, under this system, it won't take very long at all for the highly attractive women with low standards to get snapped up into relationships. They're going to get hit on a lot because they're attractive, and they also have low standards, so it may only take 2 or 3 guys to hit on her for her to settle down with one of them. Next to go will be the average women with low standards, and maybe a couple of high standards attractive women will go too. Anyway, eventually, what ends up being left of the dating pool is pretty much 2 groups. Unattractive women that next to never get hit on, and attractive women that are still on the market because their standards are too high. This is how Just Be First may be coming about, because when men and women are young, there will be some highly attractive women that are happy dating average guys. But obviously, these women disappear very quickly as they get paired off into relationships. It's almost like the housing market. If there's a house for sale that's glamorous and selling at a low price and has a seller that wants to work quickly, it will take no time at all for someone to jump in on that deal. It's always the most in-demand properties that get snapped up within the first few days of being listed. Meanwhile, the worst ones can be left on the market for months on end because nobody wants them. The exact same thing is happening in the dating market. Now, a counter-argument many people might make on this point is that women always go in and out of relationships. For example, if we take a look at this woman here, she might go into a relationship which initially takes her out of the dating pool. This stays the same until the day she breaks up, for which she will now be thrown back onto the market. Anyway, given this, what we will see if we view this dating pool as an ongoing cycle is some of the women reappearing when their relationships fail, then disappearing again when they get into new relationships. The important question is though, what women in this chart will be most likely to have their relationships fail and as a result end up back on the dating market? I think the answer is obvious. It's low purity women. These are the women that are going to cause problems in their relationships, cheat on their boyfriends, which will ultimately lead to more of them being sent back in the game to try again. In contrast, for the high purity women out there, many of these may never come back on the market after they first leave. If a young man manages to get a relationship with a high quality woman, why would he even think of letting her go? She's loyal, she's kind, there'd never be a reason for him to break up. This means not only are these women with high purity more likely to be in relationships in the first place, they are also more likely to keep them too. Think of it like the used car market. I myself bought a used car a couple months ago. It drove perfectly fine when I was test driving it and it passed all my initial checks. But then I started to notice a week after I bought it that it will suddenly conk out when idling. This made me think the only reason someone would get rid of their used car is if they knew it was low quality. Meanwhile, if someone has a good used car, they'll never want to let go of it. Once more, the exact same thing is happening in dating. So what we are left with is this skewed dating pool, all as a result of selection bias. Anyway, those are the first few points of the video. If you've enjoyed the first half, now is a good time to press the like button and leave any thoughts you have in the comments below so far, as it helps the YouTube algorithm. The next point of selection bias in dating is to do with aging. Let me introduce you to Jeremy. Jeremy is angry because every Friday when he goes to the store to buy bananas, he arrives only to find they are all rotting and manky. He then reaches the conclusion that all bananas are terrible and not worth buying. Is Jeremy's conclusion accurate? What Jeremy doesn't know is that the store gets its bananas delivered on Mondays, And when they first reach the shelves, most of the bananas are high quality. However, over the coming days, when other people buy the best ones, the average quality goes down. So, come Friday, only the worst picks are left behind. And what's more is that as the week goes by, the left behind bananas only become less desirable as their flesh starts to break down. Believe it or not, this example is exactly the same as what's happening in the dating market. When a new cohort of women first enter the dating scene, I'd expect most of them to be at the top right corner. After all, when women are young, they're at their peak desirability looks-wise, and very few of them will be holding emotional baggage from failed relationships. However, over time, as the best ones get paired off, it leaves mostly the less desirable ones. And of these ones that are left, as they continue to get older, their partner counts increase and some of them become single mothers, they move further and further to the bottom left of the graph. I think this explains why, out of all the men I've ever had consultations with, of all the guys I've seen on YouTube complaining about dating, the angriest and most bitter people are the single guys over 30. These are the ones who complain the most about single mothers looking for a provider to take care of their child. These are the guys who also tell young men to quit dating altogether because it's not worth it. But what these guys don't see is that their conclusions are largely at fault of their own selection bias. The more specific term for this type of selection bias is called survivorship bias. You can research more on your own for this if you're interested. Anyway, this point is why I'm a strong advocate for dating when you're young and trying to get a high quality relationship in your early 20s. That's of course unless you're a total bum right now, in which case you'll need to get a hold of your life first before you start dating. But for everyone else, I'd strongly recommend trying to get the relationship you want in your 20s. As much as YouTubers like to talk about women as if they're a distraction from your other goals, such as fitness, such as building success, I actually think finding the ideal relationship is another pillar that should be set up in your 20s. I believe in 4 pillars of life, and 3 of them are way easier to set up the younger you are. 1. Fitness. Your testosterone levels are a lot higher when you're younger. What an 18-year-old can accomplish in one session will take a 40-year-old 5. 2. Money. Money today is worth more than money tomorrow. If you invest in the stock market today, your investment will be twice as valuable in 10 years' time. 3. Relationships. Dating works mostly on a first come, first serve basis. It's better to be at the front of the queue so you'll get the first pick instead of being at the back and being handed the leftovers. And yes, although waiting until you have enough of these first 2 things may allow you a greater chance to find an ideal relationship, what may end up happening is there will be nothing left for you to cash in your high value. If you wait, you're too late. In other words, you could find yourself in a situation similar to walking into a Lamborghini store, with 1 million in your bank account, only to find all the cars are sold out. And yes, although it is possible to date down in terms of age, this scarcely happens nowadays unless you're in the top 5%. So basically, unless you know for a fact you're going to be in the top 5% in your 30s. Don't lay off dating when you're young. Try to find a high quality partner in your 20s if possible. And so I'm not leaving you in the dark, the last pillar is happiness. But I believe having these 3 other things set up in your 20s can lead to this one being fulfilled for the rest of your life. Anyway, so far we've spoken a lot about selection bias and how it makes the dating market worse. But what can you actually do about it? Are there ways you can use this concept to your advantage so it only filters the highest quality women? Fortunately, the answer is yes. A dating strategy I often hear from guys is they say don't ask women out on dates anymore. Instead, just ask her to come over to your place for a glass of wine and to watch a few movies. Netflix and chill if you like. The theory is that it will make things easier to escalate, filter out the flakes, and save you money. But is this strategy really effective? Well, if you're looking for short-term flings, I can see this being so. But this is probably the worst strategy you can use if you're looking for a relationship. And once again, going back to our graph, it comes down to selection bias. Let's say you ask all of these women above a 5 in looks to Netflix and chill. Who do you think is most likely to say yes to this offer? You can take it as a given that no woman above a 5 in purity will say yes to this. You can also understand that the most attractive women, even the ones that are low purity, will say no as they know they're more attractive than you. So, what you're left with is a small group of average women who aren't even close to being relationship material. In fact, the best you'll get is a woman around here who is trying to start out with you as a side chick and then hoping she can work her way up to being in a relationship with you. Anyway, if we bring everyone back and see what would have happened if you asked for a coffee date instead, after asking everyone, there still would have been a small handful of relationship material girls saying yes to this idea. Then, all you'd have to do is vet for red flags on the first date so you can filter to only the high quality ones. This shows why creating your own selection bias is everything. Another example of poor dating strategy is I see guys' Tinder profiles all the time, where their whole profile is them with other women, shirtless gym selfies, and pictures of them smoking. Then, they complain to me that they're only getting low quality matches on the app. The explanation is obvious. If they're giving F-boyish vibes in their profile, they should expect women not interested in relationships in return. Similarly, I see other guys' profiles who flaunt their Rolex watch, wear all designer clothes, and drive a Ferrari. Then these guys complain that they only attract gold diggers. But the irony is, in both of these examples, what they aren't seeing is that they are feeding their own selection bias to low quality results. The environment you choose to approach in has a massive effect too. Let's bring everyone back to the graph one more time. In a place such as a nightclub, what do you think the distribution of available women will look like? You can certainly bet it won't look like this. My guess is that it will look a lot more like this. Nightclubs are notorious for attracting those who indulge in hookup culture, those who take illicit substances, and those who go overboard with alcohol. All of these things will mean the majority of available options will fall to the bottom of this graph. So, it doesn't take a genius to work out going to a nightclub is probably the worst place to go wife searching. How about other environments? Well, I think for online dating, the distribution still on your screen will apply here too. In my experience, gyms probably have the highest average attractiveness. After all, the fact a woman goes to the gym likely implies she looks after her body and health. However, there is a question over the difficulty of approaching in the gym due to there being a lot of other guys with top 10% bodies. Warm approaches such as university and social groups are an excellent choice. Most high quality women aren't on dating apps, so if you're looking for quality, you may find it here. Lastly, cold approach will have a mixed basket as you don't know who you'll be approaching. Anyway, that's all for the video. I hope you appreciate the work that went into producing this and giving you value, so if you'd like to support me, consider buying a $5 face rating, so you will know where you stand in the current dating climate. I have almost 2,500 real reviews from you the viewers, the majority 5 stars. There are free packages available with the cheapest starting at just $5 for a basic out of 10 rating. To get this service, a link will be the first in the description of the video.